stay loose, I stay hype. I stay loose, I stay hype. I stay loose, I stay hype. I could do this all night, cause I do what I like. Yeah, I do what I like. Yeah, I do what I like. Sipping goose, sip is right. And I go with the flow. Yeah, I go with the flow. Yeah, I go with the flow. Cause I know I'm the show. In the zone, here I go. In the zone, here I go. In the zone, here I go. Yeah, they know I'm a pro. Let's go, let's go!
Ladies and gentlemen, as you can tell by my eyes, I'm like exhausted. And you might wonder why on this Sunday I'm exhausted. And it's because, and we're going to get into it right now, it's because WWE just put on probably one of, if not the best, pay-per-view of the entire pandemic era. And we're going to talk about it all right now. So much happened tonight. Even things I didn't expect to happen, good things and some bad, but we're going to talk about that right now. Welcome to the Angle Podcast, full review and results show for WWE WrestleMania BackLash, a show that just went off the air minutes ago. There's so much to talk about right now, and we're going to jump into that. Now, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe down below to stay up to date with all the Angles activity right here on YouTube. We are nearing 500 subscribers, so that is only done with your help, only done with your support. So please like and subscribe down below. Now, this night, I said on the prediction show earlier today, there were some matches that were going to be kind of transition matches, passover matches, regardless of what I thought. What they were was completely different. This entire show, from start to finish, was actually pretty decent, despite the zombie attack that we had midway through, and we're going to get into it in a little while. The first match of the night that took place, the triple threat match for the Raw Women's Championship. We saw Rhea Ripley successfully defend her championship against Asuka and Charlotte Flair. Now, I said on the prediction show earlier today that Charlotte Flair being added to this match is a bonus because she creates the moment. She creates those wow spots, those highlight reels that you get to replay over and over again. She made her way out with, by the way, let me just reference here, she had a Cruella de Vil inspired gear tonight. At least that's what I thought. Someone said it looked like a cow, but I don't know why she would wear cow gear. I don't know. And Cruella, the movie with Emma Stone, is coming out this summer, so it honestly just made sense to go with Cruella de Vil, which I think is what exactly it was. Kind of going along the lines of Sonya Deville. Not sure if that was the point, but it definitely works very well along those lines. So yes, Rhea Ripley successfully defended her Raw Women's Championship against Asuka and Charlotte Flair. Opening match of the night. And it was a great match. It was a great triple threat match. We know that Rhea Ripley does not have the best chemistry with Asuka, which is kind of why I think they added Charlotte Flair to this match. She was the only one really available to be added to this match. And she brought some great moments. She did her patented moonsault off the top rope to the outside. She did some wonderful spots in the ring. And honestly, she brought something to this match that wouldn't have happened if she wasn't there. So all those fans who are hating on Charlotte Flair, yes, I understand. You don't want to see her as the champion. I don't want to see her as a champion right now because there are so many available women and so many women who are who should have that spot right now, opposed to Charlotte Flair just continuing to rack up title wins in her career. So Rhea Ripley doing an awesome job defending successfully her title tonight, pinning Asuka while Charlotte Flair was knocked out to the outside. But it was a great triple threat match. It was a great women's championship match, and it was a great way to open the show. I think going forward, we may see, I think this is kind of Asuka's exit out of the title picture, which is completely fine because she's been in it ever since Becky Lynch announced she was pregnant, which is a little over a year ago to the date. I think last week was like a year to that show, a year ago. So Asuka's been doing so much, just being in the title picture over the last year. Uh, Unfortunately, not having the best luck doing so, just because of circumstance and WWE booking. We know this. She is one of the best female wrestlers on the roster, hands down today. Not really being put into the best storylines, and overall, it's just WWE bad booking, something we're already used to. Um, but I think going forward, we may see a Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley storyline. Um, we don't know. There was nothing really. No seeds were planted after this match. Well, actually, kind of, because last year at WrestleMania, Charlotte Flair defeated Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship, and from that moment on, there was no other one-on-one match between the two. Always being put into triple threat matches. We saw in your house, takeover in your house last year, Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley versus Io Shirai, which is where Io Shirai became the NXT Women's Champion. So Rhea and Charlotte really never having that one-on-one exchange, other than WrestleMania, not really giving Rhea the chance to come back or get some sort of rematch. So I think from what we saw tonight, Rhea Ripley pinning Asuka, exiting her out of the title picture, now opens the door to Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair for the Raw Women's Championship. And maybe we get that one-on-one match, and maybe that's where we see Rhea Ripley finally get a win over Charlotte. And I think getting a win over Charlotte when the Raw Women's Championship is on the line will solidify her as, one, a legitimate Raw Women's Champion, but two, as a dominant and future face of the women's division. So tonight, first match of the night, Rhea Ripley getting a huge victory over Asuka and Charlotte. A lot of things to look forward to going forward in the Raw Women's division. We don't know what's next to come, but from what I just kind of talked about, that could be a direction that they decide to go. Now, the next match on the card, let's see here, we had... What did we have? We had the SmackDown Tag Team Championship match. It was Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode defending those titles against father and son duo of Dominik Mysterio and Rey Mysterio. I want to see something here with the chat. If you're watching right now, let me know in the chat that you're here so I can say, hey, I see Connor said who won, Roman or Cesaro. I'm gonna get into that in a little while, but if you are just tuning in and you didn't get a chance to watch the pay-per-view, we still have. Let me just say this: Roman Reigns is still your Universal Heavyweight Champion. And I see John Green wrote back, unfortunately, Reigns. Well, I don't know if it's unfortunate, but I definitely think it was probably one of the best matches, if not the best match of the entire night. But we're going to talk about that in a little while. I do want to talk about what we had happen earlier in the night, which was the SmackDown Tag Team Championship match. Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler, the Dirty Dogs, defending those titles against father and son duo Dominik and Rey Mysterio. Now, this match kind of was one of those typical underdog story matches, typical Rey Mysterio matches. Dominik Mysterio was attacked earlier in the night by the Dirty Dogs backstage. Rey Mysterio came out, started the match on his own, pretty much performed half the match on his own until Dominik made the save, holding his ribs, obviously, from the backstage attack, and ultimately getting the win for his team. And this was a crazy, to me, this was really cool to see Dominik Mysterio get the win, or get the pinfall here, because one, he has only been in WWE for really performing in WWE for a few months now, finally getting a legitimate break in WWE. Two, I think this is the fastest that any superstar has ever debuted and then won a title. And we have to fact check that, because Dominik Mysterio, I don't even think it's been a full year since he's been performing in WWE. So that's a really cool stat to figure out too. I don't know if anybody's ever won a championship this quickly in their professional wrestling in WWE career. But what was cool about this match was the little details, like the frog splash at the end that Dominik performed to get the win, paying homage to the late, great Eddie Guerrero. As I said on the pre-show earlier today, the prediction and preview show, Eddie Guerrero being first off, one of the best wrestlers to ever live, one of my top three wrestlers of all time. Really bringing in Dominik Mysterio years ago, early 2005, 2006 time, and feuding with Rey Mysterio over the custody of Dominik. Um, and now, so many years later, Dominik and Rey Mysterio being father and son duo. But that was just one thing in itself, that they were teaming and that Dominik was in WWE. But now they won the tag team championship. Yes, if you're just tuning in, Dominik Mysterio, Rey Mysterio, the first ever father and son tag team, is now the first ever father and son tag team champions in all of WWE history, which is a really, really cool thing. And they did it by Dominik Mysterio getting the win from a frog splash off the top, paying homage to Eddie Guerrero, who I just said had a huge influence on Dominik's life, was one of Rey's best friends. It was pretty much like Uncle Eddie to Dominik. So really, really cool to see all that play out. And I tweeted out earlier in the night, like two pictures. It was like a picture of Rey Mysterio and Dominik like doing a headbutt thing, and then showing them winning the tag team titles tonight, and it said like how it started and how it's going, because I know that's always a trend going on social media, and that was pretty cool to see. Dominik and Rey Mysterio are the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions. Excellent move in my opinion. I predicted this on the pre-show, and a lot of people were saying I wish they would have had that at WrestleMania. But regardless of that, it happened tonight. It happened at WrestleMania Backlash. I think that Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler did an excellent job executing everything they needed to do in that match, and I think that this feud is going to continue. We're going to get a rematch maybe on SmackDown, maybe at the next pay-per-view, which, by the way, June 20th is WWE Hell in a Cell. Yes, the typical pay-per-view that's normally in the fall, I guess you can say fall time, autumn time, whatever you want to call it. Usually around September, October time, is now in June 20th, Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Not really sure what's going to happen now, because typically what the matches you see in the Hell in a Cell are matches we've already had previously, and now it's like the rubber match, the last of the feud in the cell to ultimately end the feuds. We're really ending all the feuds right now with WrestleMania Backlash. Maybe it's going to be weird to see new feuds take place in Hell in a Cell. And it honestly does feel like the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view was just very like a short time ago. Like I feel like it was just then when Sasha Banks beat Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship, and when the whole thing with Jey Uso and Roman Reigns took place in the Hell in a Cell, the I Quit match. Feels like yesterday. But it's pretty cool that we're going to see that happen again. And I'm excited all for Hell in a Cell, but really, really ecstatic for Dominik and Rey Mysterio becoming the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions. A huge, huge victory for Dominik to get a title victory this early on in his career. A huge victory for Rey Mysterio, tying his whole career together now, being a tag team champion with his son, something that nobody's ever done before in the history of WWE. And I'm surprised Vince McMahon didn't do that with Shane years ago, but there is still time. They can still do it, but they won't be the first ever. Dominik and Rey Mysterio becoming your new SmackDown Tag Team Champions, with a beautiful touch at the end, paying tribute to the late, great Eddie Guerrero. And with that being said, Viva La Raza. Let's go on to the next match that took place on this card. And my God, was it something else? We knew that Damian Priest versus The Miz would be the match that really just nobody, why is it happening kind of match. It's been happening ever since Damian Priest debuted on the main roster, which was in January, right after the Royal Rumble. We are in June now, or we're in May now. Can't even get the month right. We are in May. We are 5 months into the year, still going with the same feud with Damian Priest since his debut. And I hope this was the ending to that feud. And we go into the Miz and John Morrison feud, like I said on the preview show, the prediction show earlier today. But Damian Priest, this match would have been okay the way it was. But because, Dave Bautista sponsored the entire show tonight, I'm being sarcastic, because we opened up with an intro video that was narrated by Bautista. We saw all this promotion for his new movie coming out. I mean, literally every match had promotion from this movie, this new Netflix movie. And honestly, what is it, Army of the Dead or something like that? I don't know what it is. Something like that, some zombie thing with Dave Bautista coming out this summer. Was literally sponsoring it was all over the pay-per-view. I mean, there was a point where they showed Pat McAfee and Michael Cole doing commentary, and behind them it said like Army of the Dead, and then behind that on the virtual Thunderdome we had virtual zombies like lined up. It was a night tonight with the whole Army of the Dead thing. But besides the point, Dave Bautista literally like sponsoring the whole show tonight was pretty crazy, and it kind of led to this match, which was the Lumberjack match. And when Damian Priest said something about aliens and zombies, nobody knew what the hell he was talking about. But tonight we found out, and a lot of people not liking it, a lot of people actually liking it. And my highlight of the match was when Corey Graves said, "No, we're not rebooting ECW," and that wasn't a knock to ECW. It was a reference to, if you remember back in the day, or it feels like back in the day, in 2006 or whenever they did their ECW reboot, there was a superstar named the Zombie, and he came out like this whole like zombie thing, and it was a mess. It was horrible. Like if you can imagine like something worse than Raw, that was it. And that was the reference to that, because it was zombies filled around the ring. And I don't know if they were supposed to look like superstars or not, but there was one that looked like a zombie honky tonk man. I don't know if anybody saw it. Looked like an Elvis type S character, and it was pretty wild to see. And the makeup and all the stuff was done very, very well. If this was Halloween time and they were doing a whole zombie thing, 10 out of 10. Did it need to happen for this match? Probably not. Did it need to happen at the pay-per-view at all? Not at all. But if they were going to do it for a match, this was the match to do it, despite Damian Priest and being The Miz. I wasn't necessarily a fan of the whole zombie thing because, I mean, like WWE came out, there was some report saying that WWE said the Blood and Guts pay-per-view, or whatever the event, whatever you want to call it, the Blood and Guts event, pushed the business back 30 years. And then this week, they come out with this crap of zombies surrounding the ring doing a lumberjack match with the feud that's been going on for 5 months. So I'm not really sure the logic here, but I guess that's something that we'll never understand with WWE, and we just have to let it go. And then after the whole match happened, I saw all the praise and all the negative comments on social media, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? It's very easy to pick at this match and very easy to say the zombie thing sucked, the whole thing sucked, this is horrible, and now I'm turning it off. I know Dave LaGreca said that too, and I think he said he turned off the TV. But I don't want to be like everybody else in the IWC. I don't want to be like all the other podcasters. I don't want to be like all the other influencers in pro wrestling. I try to keep a positive mindset, and I was really looking forward to some of these matches tonight. And I said, you know what? This match may have not been what I wanted it to be, but the match itself was a good match. We saw John Morrison featured, getting some time in the match, not necessarily being in the match, but outside of the match, fighting off the zombies. And for me, honestly, just because I was in a positive mindset the whole night, enjoying the show, whatever we had thus far, I kind of just laughed at it. It was kind of like a comedic thing. I didn't take it too seriously. I just let it happen. And, it was promotion for Batista's movie. So I totally get why they added it. It is what it is, and, whatever happened after, it made up for it, because the entire pay-per-view, like I said at the beginning of this show, the whole pay-per-view itself was one of the best, if not the best, pay-per-view of the whole pandemic era for WWE. So Damian Priest getting a win over The Miz in the lumberjack match with all the zombies, I can deal with it, because there's so much more to talk about that happened. And that's not the focal point of the show. So with that being said, let's get on to the next match, which I believe was for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Another great match. Bayley doing an excellent job being one of the best heels in all of WWE. Bianca Belair ultimately getting the win over Bayley, successfully retaining her SmackDown Women's Championship in a unique fashion. And it was very heel-esque of Bianca Belair, and I was really creative. She used her hair, she tied it around Bayley's legs, and rolled her up and held her legs down, and Bayley got pinned. Bayley got Bianca got the upset on Bayley, and it was a great match. Every match tonight was really good. Even the Damian Priest and Miz match. Like if you take out the zombies and all that nonsense, like it was a good. All the matches were good. So I really had nothing to complain about in any of these matches. Bianca Belair getting a huge win over Bayley. Now I don't know. I mean, because it was a roll up win, I can definitely see this feud going further into one more match. Maybe we see it take place at Hell in a Cell, which is the next pay per view. Or maybe we just see it take place on SmackDown, because SmackDown has been doing this thing where they're taking pay-per-view matches that should be on a pay-per-view and putting them on the show, which, I mean, I don't mind. I love it. I love seeing it. This upcoming Friday, we have a fatal four-way match for the Intercontinental Championship. Apollo Crews defends against Big E, Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn. A lot of people saying that should have been on the pay-per-view. I don't think so. I think it was perfect the way it was tonight. And that match being on SmackDown, it gives everybody a reason to go watch SmackDown. I think Raw's booking or Raw's creative should follow lead in this. And yeah, I think that maybe we'll have a rematch for the SmackDown Women's Championship on SmackDown or on the pay-per-view, whichever. I'm okay with it. Give us one more match of Bayley and Bianca Belair. And we're waiting for Sasha Banks to come back, so maybe she gets added and we get a triple threat match at Hell in a Cell for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Who knows? There's so much going on SmackDown with so many different directions. It's very unpredictable. Some of it's predictable, but most of it's unpredictable. And I think that makes for great wrestling, makes for great TV, makes for great ratings, but ultimately it makes us, the WWE Universe, the wrestling fans, makes us really happy. So I'm okay with whatever direction they go. And plus, there's so many other women on SmackDown that could step up and challenge Bianca Belair if the story with Bayley is done after tonight. Now, if you're just tuning in, this is the Angle Podcast full review and results show for everything that happened about 20-30 minutes ago now at WWE WrestleMania BackLash. I'm your host, Joey Karni, and we are talking about all the matches, everything that happened at WrestleMania BackLash. And before I go any further, I do want to cut a little promo here for the Angle Podcast. Now, if you are new to the Angle Podcast, if you are a returning supporter, follower, watcher, listener to the Angle Podcast, and you don't know where you can find more, let me go into that right now. The Angle Podcast is a wrestling podcast. It's not Kurt Angle's podcast. No. This is the Angle Podcast with Joey Karni. I have done this podcast for over a year now, and there's many ways to get involved and many ways to listen. You can check the Angle Podcast out on all streaming platforms where you listen or where you have all your audio stuff that you listen to. Any podcast platform, you can check me out on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and I think Stitcher. And there's so many other podcast platforms to listen to the Angle Podcast. Now, where you are watching right now, the Angle Podcast on YouTube, you can subscribe down below. Even like this video if you want to help me out. You can subscribe to the Angle Podcast YouTube channel. You can see it there on the iPad. So many great interviews, like interviews with Heath Slater, John Silver. I've interviewed Ken Shamrock, Rob Van Dam. Jazz will be on the show this upcoming Tuesday. I've interviewed Melina. I've interviewed so many other wrestling stars, not just WWE, not just former stars like Ryback, and not just AEW stars, like I said, John Silver. Also, Impact Wrestling stars. I just had the opportunity to talk with D'Lo Brown about Rebellion just a few short weeks ago. A lot of great wrestling names, great interviews on this channel, alongside specials where I go over top 5 matches, top pay-per-views, belt reviews. All things pro wrestling can be found on the Angle Podcast YouTube channel, and I put my heart and soul into everything I do. You can see it through the graphics. Everything is done by me. Everything is produced by me. Everything is written by me. So if you can, please like and subscribe down below. Get up to date with all the Angles activity right here on YouTube. And stay tuned for the interview with Jazz this Tuesday on all podcast streaming platforms and YouTube. The visual, you can watch it here on YouTube. And if you want to get more in depth and find out more information on the Angle podcast, you can go to www.theangleradio.com. You can check out and about me as to who I am, what I do, why I'm doing this podcast, and where I plan to go with it. There's a blog on there as well. You can read all different my thoughts on pro wrestling. You can read about all some events that I've attended. I kind of give a written visual form so you can kind of understand what the environment was like, things like that, and overall just my thoughts on pro wrestling. I write articles on backstage, kind of backstage information on some interviews, stuff you may not see on camera or hear on the podcast. I write about everything there. Anything pro wrestling related can be found there, alongside the channel, episodes, all my guests have been on here, and even a shop where you can get merchandise, not specifically to the Angle podcast, but if you're a pro wrestling fan, I'm sure there's something on the store that you would love to have, love to wear, love to rep. I know there's a new shirt on there that says free agent. There's a heel shirt. There's a babyface shirt. There's a lot of stuff that's all things pro wrestling, not necessarily Angle, and all the proceeds go to building this podcast to the best it can be. So if you can, please go on there, find something that suits you best, support the podcast, and like and subscribe on YouTube. It's very easy to do. Everything is just at the click of a button for the Angle podcast right here. You can listen, you can follow, and please, please, please subscribe. Now back to what we were discussing, which is WrestleMania BackLash, a pay-per-view that ended 30 minutes ago, and we're talking about everything right now. This is the Angle podcast full review and results show. I am your host, Joey Karni, and thus far we have talked about the opening match, which was the Raw Women's Championship match. Rhea Ripley defending her title successfully against Asuka and Charlotte Flair. We had Damian Priest defeat The Miz in a Lumberjack match, which was actually not Lumberjacks, but they were zombies in an attempt to promote Batista's new movie or new whatever it is, Army of the Dead. We had the SmackDown Tag Team Championship on the line. We have the first ever father and son duo to ever hold those titles. Dominik and Rey Mysterio are the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions, defeating Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode, better known as the Dirty Dogs. We just finished wrapping up about the SmackDown Women's Championship match. Bianca Belair getting a huge victory over Bayley, using her hair to kind of tie up Bayley's legs, getting a win. We don't know if there's going to be another match in this feud, but either way, we are all excited. I know I am excited for what's next to come with all the matches that we have talked about thus far. Now it's time to get into the heat of things here, the main events of the night, the biggest and baddest matches of the entire evening, one of them being for the WWE Championship. Bobby Lashley successfully defending his championship against Drew McIntyre and Braun Strowman. Now, it's not every pay-per-view that you can say, or at least I can say, that both world title matches, the WWE Championship and the Universal Championship matches, were banger classic matches, and not even that. Two of the best matches of the entire pay-per-view. And I'm happy to say that, because it's been a long time since we've seen some really, really, really good matches from WWE, and this WWE title triple threat match, probably one of the best triple threat matches WWE's done in the last, in a long, long time. Bobby Lashley defending successfully against Drew McIntyre and Braun Strowman. We saw Braun Strowman powerbomb Drew McIntyre through the announce table. We saw Drew McIntyre through Bobby Lashley through the LED boards on the ramp, and kind of spark an explosion. No AEW reference there. But it was a great match. We saw Braun Strowman literally get manhandled by Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley. I mean, double suplex. Just so many things happening in this match. It was great. Everything happened the way that I believe it should have. Braun Strowman eating the win, looking really, really strong this past Monday, so that kind of levels or balances him out back to a top level main eventer, or a high level mid card, or whichever you want to do with him. But I think what this sets up is hopefully the return of Brock Lesnar this summer for SummerSlam. I said that on the pre-show. I know a lot of people were saying that as well. It's inevitable that we get Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley, regardless if it's for the WWE Championship or not. This match is going to happen eventually. And if it is going to happen, it needs to happen at the biggest part of the summer, the pay-per-view that has literally made Brock Lesnar famous, It's where he won his first WWE Championship, and it's where he became the undisputed champion. SummerSlam, Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar. I think that's the next, no pun intended, the next big thing for Bobby Lashley. Ultimately, this match, one of the best matches of the night, one of the best triple threat matches we've seen in a long, long time. Bobby Lashley being a strong WWE champion, something that we really, really need, kind of leading out back to live crowds, leaving behind the pandemic era. Now, the main event of the entire night, a match that I said in the prediction show earlier today that should be the main event. And it's the first time that Cesaro, I don't know if it's the first time, but Cesaro main eventing a pay-per-view, walking in to compete for a world championship. All is well in the world. This is where he should be. And from his performance tonight, I hope the doubters are all listening, because Cesaro put on a banger of a match. It's not every day that you can have a technical masterpiece with Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns' style really changing since he returned as a heel, kind of taking the road of a Brock Lesnar, where he's just a powerhouse and puts you to sleep. And Cesaro pushed the limit tonight with Roman Reigns. I think he did an excellent job. For me, this was match of the entire night. But it was kind of hard to pick a match of the entire night because all the matches were great. So this match for me, honestly, was match of the night. Roman Reigns is still your Universal Champion. And I said earlier on the prediction show that I'm completely okay with Cesaro losing tonight, because I think if he was to win, it would hurt him, because being pushed too fast makes the fans boo you. And over the last month, Cesaro went from nothing, not nothing, but like being not booked, to having a match at WrestleMania, beating Seth Rollins twice, now in the main event of a pay-per-view with with championship on the line. Like, it was just a very quick progression for Cesaro. And, you know, rightfully so. He's been underrated and underutilized for so many years. But I think if they were to like stretch this out, maybe to another pay-per-view or even SummerSlam, like the slow burn build for Cesaro, it definitely would have worked. Because now that he lost to Roman Reigns, where does he go from here? I think we're going to continue the story with Seth Rollins, because, spoiler alert, if you didn't get to watch the pay-per-view, after Roman Reigns defeated Cesaro, Jey Uso came out, beat down Cesaro, and then out came Seth Rollins, who everybody thought was going to turn face and maybe help Cesaro, but he ultimately beat down Cesaro after having a stare down with Roman Reigns. And I tweeted out earlier today, and I got like verbally attacked by everybody on social media, and I said, I basically said, Seth Rollins is going to organically turn face and face Roman Reigns at SummerSlam for the Universal Championship. And let me elaborate on that. If you're one of those people who were hating on me today for that tweet and are watching right now, which I doubt you are, but what I meant by that is that if you look back at Drew McIntyre's face turn, it was organic. He was not face yet when he was getting cheered. Walking into the Royal Rumble of 2020, he was not a face. He was a heel facing Randy Orton early in January. He started getting cheers and like organic cheers, and everybody wanted, myself included, wanted Drew McIntyre to win the Royal Rumble. At the Royal Rumble, it was the face turn that he needed. But it was organic up until that point. For Seth Rollins, he was one of the best faces on Raw. Don't at me there, but his Intercontinental Championship reign, I think it was like 2018 or 19, was one of the best I think I've seen in a long, long time. Now his Universal Championship reign was fantastic, and that was as a face. Now that Seth is a heel, and if you look at Seth's track record over the last year, he hasn't really performed at all. And then, yes, Becky Lynch's fiance had a baby in December, but that's not why he hasn't really wrestled. In my opinion, he hasn't performed because they want the fans to want to see him. Because anytime they do see Seth Rollins, he's putting on a classic match, whether it was on WrestleMania against Cesaro, which to me was the best match of the entire weekend for WrestleMania. And then he's putting on another good match against Cesaro on SmackDown and foreshadowing a match with Roman Reigns. Now, you can easily do a Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns match at SummerSlam for the Universal Championship, heel versus heel. But the problem with WWE today is that, and it happened to Ricochet, and I'm going to make a reference to Ricochet on the pre-show today where he lost to Sheamus. Ricochet is someone who's been trying to get over for so long, trying to get back in, in the groove of things. He's a natural babyface, and that's the downfall to why his character is not working. He's a natural babyface, so he lost tonight, and then smiled about it, and had fun with Sheamus's hat and jacket after the match, and then ran away. That's why the character is not working. There's blurred lines today between heels and baby faces. So I think Seth being a face, technically being a face, but keeping somewhat of what he's doing now, I think would be the best way to move him forward. And I think all these little, excuse me, I think all these little hints that we're seeing, the Usos costing Seth Rollins the match against Cesaro on SmackDown, which was for tonight's opportunity. And then the run-in with Roman Reigns in the back. And then tonight, while Cesaro's getting beaten down, we get Seth Rollins. It looks like he's going to make the save. Everyone thinks he's going to make the save. Has another stare down with Roman Reigns, and then starts beating down Cesaro. There's foreshadowing there. There's seeds being planted. And that's why I said earlier today, because I was actually preparing for what I wanted to say on the prediction show, talking about Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam, talking about what I want to see for Money in the Bank. Apparently there was a thing on the bowling. There was some bowling tournament or something, and on Fox, and they said something about Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns at SummerSlam, and then they retracted the statement because they kind of leaked it or something like that. Somebody, I don't know, I got attacked with that today. I didn't even know that happened because I don't watch bowling. I don't even know anybody who watches bowling. I didn't even know about that until after. I was just preparing my thoughts for the prediction show because I wanted to talk about Money in the Bank and on SummerSlam, everything that's happening tonight going forward, where we can go. And that's why I said, plus, hello, it's been written on the wall for weeks now since that stare down with Seth and Roman, that match is inevitable. It's gonna happen. Regardless if it's at SummerSlam or not, it's gonna happen. So I think that SummerSlam is probably the best place for that match to happen. And if it's heel versus heel, or Roman Reigns versus a tweener of Seth Rollins, I think the fans, I know myself now, I want more Seth Rollins. I miss Seth Rollins. He doesn't have to be a face or a heel. I just miss the in-ring work because I think that's really what's missing in WWE right now. So that's why I tweeted that out today, and the freaking tweet went viral. I don't even understand where that came from. But regardless, tonight's pay-per-view was honestly one of the best of the pandemic era, if not the best of the pandemic era. Every match on this card was fantastic. Even the match that was the zombie thing. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going to happen going forward. I'm excited for what's to come. Maybe tomorrow night on Monday Night Raw we get some things happen. I'm not really sure. But let me go over the matches again tonight and the results. Damian Priest in the Lumberjack match with the Zombies. Damian Priest got a win over The Miz. SmackDown Tag Team Championship match. Rey Mysterio and Dominik Mysterio got a huge win over Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode, becoming the first ever father and son duo to hold tag team gold in WWE. The Raw Women's Champion Rhea Ripley defeated Asuka and Charlotte Flair in a triple threat match. The SmackDown Women's Champion Bianca Belair successfully defended against Bayley. The WWE Champion Bobby Lashley defeated Drew McIntyre and Braun Strowman in a triple threat match. And in the main event of the show, Roman Reigns choked out Cesaro to retain the Universal Championship, and out came Seth Rollins to end the show, foreshadowing the inevitable, which is Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins, hopefully for the Universal Championship. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this full review and results show. I cannot wait to see what happens on Monday Night Raw tomorrow. I haven't said that in a long time, but from what we saw tonight, hopefully that momentum carries over to tomorrow and we can finally get some good stuff happening on Monday Night Raw. I said earlier today that It's not that Raw is a bad show. The writing is bad. And there are good things on the show, but when there's more bad than good, it becomes labeled as bad. So hopefully Raw can pick up some slack, follow what SmackDown is doing, and I think going forward, uh, maybe we can have some good stuff happen on Monday Night Raw. But I always love to end these shows on a positive note. And that is first off, what a great night for pro wrestling. What a pay-per-view, WrestleMania Backlash. I knew some of the matches were going to be good, but the pay-per-view after WrestleMania is always that one that's always like, ugh, no, on to the next. It's always the rematches from WrestleMania, whatnot. All the new champions retain, whatever. But if you look at the history of Backlash itself, I mean, this is where Jinder Mahal defeated Randy Orton to become the WWE Champion. This is where AJ Styles defeated then known as Dean Ambrose to become the WWE Champion. This is where we saw Randy Orton defeat Cactus Jack in 2004 in a hardcore match, ultimately sending him to the moon, not Cameron Grimes, but Randy Orton to the moon to be in the world title picture. Backlash has always been a great pay-per-view. It has always done great things for superstars. Bring some this is even the pay-per-view that Goldberg debuted in WWE and defeated The Rock, sending him to Hollywood. Backlash 2003. All good things have happened at Backlash. And despite last year being labeled as the greatest wrestling match of all time with Randy Orton and Edge, I'm completely content with what we saw tonight. WrestleMania Backlash being one of, if not the best, wrestling pay-per-view of the entire pandemic era. I'm excited for what's going to happen going forward. I know in July we're going to have some fans. We're going to have live shows again for WWE, so that's exciting news. And I always like what I said, I always like to end this show on a positive note. What a great time to be a pro wrestling fan. Please like and subscribe down below. Almost to 500 subscribers, and it doesn't happen without your help. It doesn't happen without your support. So please like and subscribe. And with that being said, I will see you tomorrow night for Monday Night Raw, and hopefully we can have another good night of pro freaking wrestling. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good night. I'm signing off.